allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for your participation. Review of the agenda, Superintendent Garrett.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. The agenda, there have been no changes. Want to excuse Assistant Superintendent Nee and Director Freeman tonight, and also welcome Director Krimitz, who's joining us on Zoom on these two spots. And Director Krimitz, and you can unmute as needed on there. And other than that, no changes in the agenda, Director Johnson.
Any communication to the board?
Nope.
Moving forward, item number 1 with the recommendation for hire is located in our packet on page 1 and 2. Superintendent Gordon.
All right, thank you. So board, you will see in your packets on page 1 and 2, we have some recommendations for hire and resignation there, and would ask for your action to take action on these recommendations moving forward.
I so move.
There's a motion to approve. Do I have a second? I have a second. I have a motion. Is there any discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let the record show it was unanimous. The next item on the list is a bid approval for security festivals at Eastwood, Fir Grove, RHS, and Winchester. Carol?
Thank you. As directed by the board last June, we have moved ahead with the security projects that we can do with our ESSER funding. And we have completed the secure vestibule entries for both Joe Lane and Fremont. And the next step is these 4 schools that you see before you. We have plans drawn up by Paul Bentley, and we received bids for these 4 yesterday. The second set of bids will go out in July. We'll do 3 more schools: Green, Sunny Slope, and Fullerton, and the remaining schools will be done shortly thereafter. The entire bid, you see here the detail. We received 2 bids, and the apparent low bid was 3H Construction for $768,119.
May I add that Mr. Bentley is a local architect?
He is.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve the request for security? Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Schultz?
This particular will be ESSER money, the COVID money.
Any other director questions? Hearing no questions, are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let the record show it was unanimously approved. Item number 3, bid approval for the utility relocate and house removal on Finley Avenue. Cheryl?
This is related to the softball field, or somewhat multi-purpose field, but mostly softball field located behind the grandstands off of Finley. I gave you a little bit of detail here on the sheet as to the progress and to what are some next steps. But right now we have bid out. There is a fairly interesting, complicated utility locate, and then we need the house demoed and removed after some abatement and a few other processes. We received we invited 3 contractors to bid, received 1 bid, so we went out and sought a 4th bid. And the apparent low bidder is Knife River Materials for $80,684.
I'll move the approval of the utility relocation work at house. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Or any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When you ask for these bids, do you tell them of the timeline that needs to be kept in a tight manner, or do you?
Yes, Tracy Groff reached out and spoke with the contractors and obtained the bids, and he did tell them the certain timelines and if they could meet them. So they are prepared. Asbestos and lead abatement will happen as soon as we ask. They have a pretty good time window there, and then we'll bring in the contractor who knows of our timeline. The next steps being dirt work, hopefully starting August 1st, and the actual turf installation starting September 1. Those are pretty tight timelines, but everybody thus far is on board.
There's a reference here to the loosened trunk line. Does that run through our property? Does it run under Finland Street?
It is, I don't know if it's exactly under Finley as it exists right now. We are asking for a road vacation, although there have to be a road there for routes of access. They're relocating, there's a manhole that is just over the fence in the Laurelwood neighborhood yard that's coming out, moving our way. That has to happen so we can vacate the line that's underneath the transition house. The main trunk line then does travel along Finley and goes under the freeway and goes out to treatment facilities.
Yeah, but Finley's been a public road, of course, but it's been by all the property along. You get it vacant. So it's still gonna have that sewer there.
Yes, there'll still be RUSA easements, both along that side, on the east side by Laurelwood, and all the way down on the other side, there's another manhole where all the rest of that neighborhood, the rentals that we own tie into by where, I don't know if you know where our pump house is for the high school.
I'm just a fan of underground utilities. Are there any other questions? If there none, do I have a motion on the floor? Yes, I do. Are we ready to put the question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Let the record show it was unanimous. Item number 4, consideration of salary adjustment proposal for the 23-24 school year. Superintendent?
All right, thank you. We'll share a slide here in just a minute, but before I do that, I wanted to start by thanking the board for their focus on the strategic plan. There is a statement in our strategic plan under one of our key measures there that our school environments will ensure everyone feels safe, seen, heard, and respected. And I want the record to show, I think it's important to talk about tonight, and I want to thank the board for this publicly around the many conversations we've had over the course of this last year, and even before that, around how are our students doing and how are our staff doing. And what I'm going to share with you tonight really is in response to both the support on our strategic plan and also the conversations I've had with many of you individually and conversations we've had collectively as a board and superintendent on supporting our students and supporting our staff. Let me share this real quick. So tonight, I was asked by the board to develop a proposal that came from a board discussion, and that resulted in a discussion previous from a board subcommittee. And I want to talk a little bit about this proposal and what it means here tonight. So what's the proposal I'm bringing you today is a proposal that totals 1.45 million dollars. Some information here about the impacts of this, also the total number of staff, the total cost. And then to the right, you'll notice our current CBA agreement we have next year of a 2% increase. So a couple of things I'll just talk about here before we start. What we know, and what I appreciate in bringing this proposal to you is we have a collective bargaining agreement. We're in the second of 3 years with the collective bargaining agreement. It was a 4-3-2 collective bargaining agreement in terms of increase, and we're currently in the year of 3%. Next year, moving to 2%. The proposal tonight would do the following. And I think it's probably important to also recognize, and I appreciate Director Lee mentioning this at the last meeting, is we've thought about how to support our staff who support our children, our students. We looked at some different methods of compensation. And tonight, so we looked at things like, what would it look like if there was a one-time retention bonus? What would it look like if we did retro pay? Well, we looked at kind of different options. And what I want the board to know before we kind of go through this is this proposal would raise compensation for classified and confidential employees by $1 per hour, plus their 2% in the CBA coming up next year. This would be effective July 1. For licensed administrators, it'd be 2% increase, in addition to the 2% in the CBA. This this is what I call, I don't know if Cheryl, if it's the right language, but when I think about money, there's kind of a one-time money you can pay. This came last year when we had a grant to do a retention bonus. That's kind of one-time payment. This is what I consider compounded money. So these dollars would be, it's $1.45 million this year, but this money kind of raises the base, if you will, for the following year. That being said, in terms of, I want to talk for just a minute about what this means in terms of how we would cover the cost of this. It is important to realize that it would be an unwise financial practice to pay for what I call compounded money with one-time money. Because these dollars will increase if the board accepts this proposal over time. How we've collected essentially the funds to do this is over the course of the last couple of years, we actually have increased supports for students pretty significantly over the last couple of years. We've also seen a decrease in student enrollment over the last couple of years. And these, the funding for this really comes in an adjustment that we've made to recoup about $1.45 million or collect that $1.45 million by not needing to hire certain positions that we've funded as we've had an increase in funding and a decrease in enrollment. So that's kind of where we're going to be making the savings to pay for this. We will not be laying anybody off. But there will be some positions that we're not hiring for. And so that's where the money for this comes from. So I'm happy to entertain any questions the board might have about this. If you have questions, and I would put this out for discussion and an action tonight.
Thank you, Superintendent. Please let the chair recognize you before you start asking your question. Anyone have a question? Bishop?
Needs to be approved by OSEA as well.
Right, so we do have two bargaining groups, our classified group and our licensed group. And so what this would, if the board were to approve this, then I would work with our licensed and classified associations to do an MOU for salary only. And so it wouldn't reopen the whole contract, but an MOU just for salary. And they would go through the processes they have in their own agreement for however they want to do ratification on that.
And that would have to be ratified by their union prior to the implementation.
Right, implementation in this proposal will be July 1. And so depending on the processes they go through, we kind of respect the process they need to go through. If it does go to ratification, typically that's about a 5-day process. So that could be, if the board were to take action tonight, that could be accomplished before the July 1 timeline.
Thank you, Lee.
So what we're talking about here, if we adopted this proposal, would be $1 per hour and 2% effective July 1st because of this adjustment matter. Then in addition, under the contracts, there's a 2% adjustment effective July 1st. So is the effect that people will get either a 4% bump or a 2% plus $1?
Correct. Yeah.
Correct.
And so really for our licensed and our administrative staff, it would effectively be a 4% bump July 1. And some people qualify for steps in addition to that, depending on where you land and where you sit there. For our classified and confidentials, it would be $1 per hour effective July 1, in addition to the 2%.
Or $1 per hour plus 2% on top of the $1 per hour. And as I said before, I think this is a sort of an unexpected situation where costs for living have gone up more than we had anticipated. It's a good thing to have longer term contracts to avoid having to negotiate all the time. But those longer term contracts involve assumptions about the way the economy is going to be. And we've got ourselves in the world has put us in a situation where costs have gone up more than we expected. And I think this is an appropriate way to deal with things. The other question about whether our staffing levels I mean, our staffing levels have to reflect the number of students we have. And as you point out, we've been losing students, so that does create a need for that kind of adjustment as well. So I think this is a good idea.
Director Cotton?
I got a good microphone. I can yell. Give me all.
Yeah.
Sure you can hear me. So. Off the top of your head, Cheryl, the dollar an hour, is it difficult to come up with what that percentage would be? 2% for certified. What would be $1 an hour for classified? I know it's $1 an hour, but could you put a percentage on that?
So, somebody that makes 14.80 an hour is about a 7% plus the 3%.
9%. So what I want to make sure this doesn't go unnoticed. And I'm glad we're in a position we can do this. We're not required to do this. It's, we have a contract for another year, but we recognize, to me, the biggest issue is retaining and recruiting employees. That's why we have to do this. And I really want the school district to get back to being the employer of choice in Douglas County. And I can go off, being in quick service for 46 years. For classifieds, they used to get paid, they were paid more and their benefits were really good. Now you can go to a quick service restaurant. Doesn't matter which one I name. And you can actually sometimes make more per hour in a quick service restaurant, and the benefits are as good. And to me, that's not right. I mean, we got to have folks that are taking care of the most precious thing in this community, and that's kids. And so I'm in favor of this. And we'll start negotiating. It'll be here before we know it. But I think it's a good start.
Any other comments?
I'll just make one if I can. I
Yes,
do
please.
think it's worth noting to the board that as I talk to superintendents across the state, that many school districts right now are in a riffing situation at the 9.9 level. And we've heard indications of getting to 10.1. But I do think it is important for, I think, the board to recognize and the community to recognize that, to your point, nothing has to be done, but we value our people. We value our employees who do amazing work for us. We're so thankful. They're the key people that take care of our students, which is our key mission. And I've said before, so it's interesting context of you're hearing about riffing in other districts. I know Beaverton was going to lay off 90 and Tiger 12 was in layoffs. There's other conversations around there about layoffs. But I think I just appreciate a board that has a focus on the right work, which is how do we take care of our students? You need people to do that. And I've said before, I think getting back to this comment around we want to be the place people want to be at. And I think you need three people. You need three things. You need a strong contract, you need the right culture and the right supports. And I think at least in two of those areas, this proposal I present to you tonight addresses at least two of those.
And I would like to add, from an accounting standpoint, it's a very sound management of money to reach this number. It was not a dart contest. It was well thought out, discussed in the subcommittee, and well thought out about how we can approach our critical employees with monetary appreciation of their hard work. And having said that, the chair would entertain a motion to move the superintendent to have the superintendent prepare the MOU and start negotiating with classified and licensed to get this done.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for the superintendent to move forward. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let the record show unanimous. We realize a lot of you came tonight just to hear that. We hope that you can now, if you desire to go home and enjoy your family, I will have a brief recess to allow you to do so without interrupting us. Your presence is sincerely appreciated. Your productivity is surely appreciated. Thank you so much. We'll have a 5-minute brief recess. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you later. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I love
Have a
your
good one. Thank you.
Love them too.
And my green socks.
We want to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
That went well.
Thank you for coming back.
You didn't bring his glasses, Thomas. I'm good. I'm still going on this one.
Still nursing one?
And then Doug gave me this for Mother's Day. I think it's a subtle hint for me to drink more water. Be passive aggressive. Lay off the Diet Coke, have some water, sweetheart. Mother's Day gift. I was like, are you saying something? Yeah. Wow. That's a good job keeping your water. Ooh, I'm in from their outer rooms. Hey again. You got to start. And I actually got something. Yeah, I brought him in.
There's so much room.
I'd like to reconvene our meeting. We're now going to enter into a board work session. No public participation tonight and no director report at the end of the meeting. We are honored to have Thomas and Kat with us tonight from Phoenix School. We will give you the floor.
Thank you, Reverend Johnson. It's a pleasure to be here again for our quarterly report. I'm just going to start us out by letting you all know we prepared some remarks and we all handed you a copy of those. On the back side is the cliff notes to the multiple page performance growth Excel. So that's what the back side is. I'm just going to welcome you to join us if you choose. Tuesday, June 6th, 6 p.m. at Umpqua Community College, we will have our commencement of class of 23. We already have over 20 graduates, and we'll see where the rest get by the June 6th. I think we're down to single digits now with days left in the school year. I'm going to turn it over to Kat next.
So really this year has been about identifying areas of growth and figuring out what we have as a team. We had a lot of really new staff this year. I'm really excited to see how we've come together as a group to work with these kids. So that's my highlight for this year, is just how well we're working together as a team, and that the enthusiasm that I'm seeing from my group. And even at the end of the year, where we're all tired, they're excited about next year, and they're excited about some of the programs that we're working on. So I'll just go through briefly on academic updates. We will have a review of how we did this year with our math and reading scores at the end, the next time that we meet. We're still completing up our end of the year testing, so we want to be able to have that snapshot of where they were when they started and where they ended up. We do have, at this time, we have a testing rate of 85% in math and 82% in reading. And that is as of May 3rd, currently enrolled students. So there is a different number here, and that is in February, we did reach 94% of, I think was it 94? 92% as of February 2023. So it's just a snapshot of how many students we have covered at that time. So the way we've been achieving that is when they come into the school, we have been making sure that part of their pathways and introduction to our school is involving taking those assessments when they come in. So that way we're capturing each one that comes in. We're still working on our attendance rates. Our pathways teachers are increasing with their check-ins. We've been creating attendance contracts with the kids to get them to stay engaged. We have expanded our clubs, and I think that's been really successful. So we have 3 clubs now, and we're looking at starting a principal advisory council next year, as well as a peer restorative justice team next year. So we're hoping that that continues to improve the school culture and get the kids their buy-in and engagement to the programs. For our performance growth updates, we sent 2 of our instructional leaders to the 5D training, and they completed that series. We picked a veteran staff and a brand new younger staff. So that enthusiasm that both of those team members brought back was really encouraging, and they're ready to work hard to improve our PLCs for next year. We've been doing some redesign on that based on some of the things that they learned. We also have invested in an online curriculum mapping tool that we'll be using to get every teacher to put their curriculum up on the clouds, so that we can work together as a team, and so that I can better monitor what's going on in the classroom. And we can use those that collaboration across curriculum as well. So if we're having we're doing some garden activities, then we can bring that back to the math classroom, and they can do some soil analysis with percentages and things like that. So we could really see what's happening in what section of the school, and bring that in with some other cross-curricular activities. So those are the things that we're going to be working on for next year to improve our growth. And then what I did with the strategic plan is I just added some updates of how things were doing, and basically just making a check-in to see if we're making growth and if we need improvement. So there is some areas that we need improvement, and you'll be able to see those in here. And I also identified some of those areas in the back. Kind of give you an overview of some of the big takeaways from what we've learned this year.
Yeah,
So-
Mike, oh, go ahead.
So does anybody have any questions for me on this portion of the report?
And my comments are going to be brief. I just came across the Youth Development Oregon re-engagement data. If you don't know about the Youth Development Division, they are a part of the Oregon Department of Education. You can see their mission statement on the prepared marks there. We are a major grant recipient of them. They support 2 of our classified staff who directly work with the students, achieving supports with them. And the students tracked in this data, they have to meet a statute-based eligibility requirement, which is ages 14 to 21, a dropout under the ORS, or they're referred to the school by a youth authority, ODHS, juvenile department, or the school district, and/or are a youth 3 or more credits behind. And so you can see the data from 1,400 kids who are part of these programs across the state. I think the it's a rich data to see, and just the reasons for disengagement impact all educators. This is a good data to see some of the most alarming students who are falling behind, and then hearing directly from them why are reasons they are falling behind. And I just wanted to bring that data to you all. That's the state data. And then I had my team just generate the data for our school as per our grants that we're already collecting, just so you could see that. Note that the data for this year, of course, is incomplete because we haven't finalized the school year, but I felt the data was something to help further see our students, further see what's happening in our community, further see what's happening in Oregon. So I just wanted to share that all with you.
Do we have any questions from the directors? Billy?
I mean, on this part of the report. I'm pleased with what you're doing. Curious, I have the feeling that when kids are in an academic environment and they're feeling disconnected, I can picture in my head trying to assess a kid when the kid, I mean, if you just put him in a room with a bunch of paper to fill out and he doesn't care about it, that doesn't work out very well. How do you get an accurate assessment on some kid who is first coming to school and he probably doesn't really want to go to school, as opposed to maybe an assessment later after hopefully he's gotten engaged?
We work really hard to make connections with kids in the very beginning, and we have what's called a pathways period. And it's a first period that they have, we have it 4 days a week, and it's with the same teacher, and that same teacher works with that student as they go through their whole school year. But when they first come in, we have a pathways teacher that's kind of going over all of the lay of the land for those students, and they start building connections. So it's not an instant, here you go, here's the test. It's more of like, here's a relationship that we're building together, and here's some trust. And then they get to the point where, okay, with that trust, we need to know where you're at so we can help you, with input you at the right levels of things that you need to do. So really it's based on creating that relationship. And what's good is the individual that's doing that, the first pathway, is really good at matching those students up with different teachers. And so they kind of get an idea of that student's personality, and then they reach out to a specific teacher who they know will match well with that student, and they'll continue that relationship building. So it's really about
when you talked
relationships.
about an assessment when kids come in,
Mhm.
it's not on the first day that they come through the doors.
No.
It's a week or two later.
Yep, they have this initial pathways for about 2 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks is the average of students in the pre-flight pathway.
And they do have to kind of finish a series of tasks. So if they're not quite engaging yet, they might stay in that pathways a little bit longer until they meet the requirements.
Or they might just go away and not come back, but, okay.
Well.
Thank you.
Director Cotton?
A couple weeks ago, I heard you and Ron on the radio,
Yeah.
and it was nice to be reminded of the history of Phoenix. A couple things I had forgotten over the years. So how'd your dinner go? Your fundraiser?
The dinner went good. We, Director Cotton's referring to, we had our annual spring dinner on the 20th of May. We honored Ronnie and Jerry Bruce, and we honored Jackie and Rick Sohn as part of our history and part of their work. It's been 20 years since the doors opened on 3131 Diamond Lake. And so we were honoring that history. Don't
That's
schedule an
helpful.
event on the same night as the NRA in Douglas County, a lesson learned. So we were a little bit lighter than we had anticipated. There was also another major function, the Josh Bidwell function. But it was successful in fundraising. I have a brand new team, so it was also, but yeah, we're trying to remind people. I've launched something called the 2031 initiative, that's the year Phoenix turns 50.
Yep.
And so we're trying to get people to help bring in their voice to what should we be on our 50th birthday.
So which brings me, so starting July, we're gonna have 3 new board members. And just kind of a heads up if we can. We used to meet as boards, the same, your board, our board would meet generally out at Phoenix. And I hope we can do that early on.
Okay.
Whoever the powers to be to get that together. I enjoyed the tours out there. And if we can do that. I
Yeah,
think
it was
that would be wise.
2015 with Superintendent Parsons the last time
Yeah,
I did
so-
that, but I'm hearing the goal now and I'll do what I can.
Yeah, I mean, it's just me. I'm just one of 7, but I'd like to see it. I think it's important.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cotton.
Any other director comments? Director Bishop? I'm sorry.
Your attendance numbers here, they look good. We're like a 7% increase in the attending above 90% from last year, this year. Like 3 to 5% increase, and then a corresponding decrease in people attending less than 3%. Is that an accurate representation of the third trimester? Is that the same about over year for the whole year?
I think the third trimester may be
Is it better?
better,
Okay.
but it's still, it's gonna take the whole year for me to really
Right.
recognize the patterns, but I do see attendance up. And I was mentioning this to Thomas during May, and he said, well, it's because kids want to graduate.
Well, these are positive numbers. I mean, that's I think what we asked for. If I've been here, what we've been asked for is this growth, it doesn't happen overnight, but 7% of kids going to above 90% of the time is a good increase year over year. If you can do that a couple years in a row, you got what I think what we're asking for. Everything I have here. The tests, the 85%. That's just people who've taken the test so far, and that's up quite a bit, I believe,
Yes.
over last year.
Yes,
And we were down to
Phenomenally.
50% or something.
Yeah.
It's below 50% that were tested last year.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Director Bishop?
Anecdotally, one of your students has been in my clinic, shadowing one of my partners, and they have been very respectful and kind, and I think you guys are making good changes. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop.
Good. Andrew said it.
Well, I heard a comment once said by a gentleman that owns Fiscal Foods. We haven't done anything well enough to stand on our own laurels. As long as we will continue to listen and exchange of intelligence, we can move forward together. And that's my goal. I want to thank both of you for spending your time tonight and giving us our update. We look forward to the next quarterly update. And as Director Cotton mentioned, maybe somewhere in the future, we can have a joint meeting. Thank you so much for coming. We do appreciate it.
Thank you for the warm welcome, and I wish you the best in the rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Moving forward, we have the next item is the report from a survey results on clothing the school makeup days.
Okay. I am here, actually, the next 2 items on the agenda, actually the last 2 items I think on the agenda are follow-ups on directives I received from the board last meeting. The board asked to commission some survey, or I wouldn't say study, but a survey, if you will, on what do our parents think about this idea. So I'll present that to you tonight. I do think the graphics are good reminders. The bond was unsuccessful, and we will have issues in the future with classrooms that are too warm. And it's worth just mentioning again, the new OSHA requirements around heat index, we cannot operate in when we hit that threshold. We've seen an increase in wildfires. We've obviously dealt with a couple snow days this year. So the context, I think, is very important. So a lot of jargon here, but basically shot of our calendar here. The board has approved a calendar currently that has 3 makeup days embedded in it. This tonight, just I'll give you a couple of data points here. So we opened up this survey May 12th, and it ran through the 19th. It ran a week. We asked some questions. I'll show you those questions in a minute. We heard back from 701 people. 436 of those were parents or indicated they were parents, 187 responses from staff, 71 from students. Those were just RHS students, and 7 who indicated other. And I'll share the results with you tonight. So the first question we asked in this simple survey that went out is, would people support a plan to allow a certain number of closure days before makeup days begin? And you'll see there that the large majority, 93.3%, said that they would support that. When asked about how many days they would support, we gave them 1, 2, or 3 days. And you can see that 80% said they would support 3 days, and 16.2 were 2 days, and we had a small percentage that said 1 day. The makeup of the people's role that were asked this, the majority, about 2/3, were identified as parents or guardians. About a quarter were staff members, and about 10% students. And again, we had some people identify their role was other than that. So I just come to present that. That's all I have for you there. This is, of course, not listed on the agenda as an action item, but a discussion item. So I'm happy to answer any questions that I can from the board.
I just have a comment. With the bond failure and the new OSHA rules. Moving forward, and obviously this calendar has already been adopted, but if you'll notice, we don't have any scheduled makeup days until February. And then one is in February, and then the other 2 are at the very end of the school year, which we've already discussed. I really think they're garbage days. They're garbage days. It might be wise moving forward, and I don't know where you put this in the notes, to look at building in some makeup days earlier in the school year, because I think we're going to have more heat and smoke closures until we get air conditioning and until we get ventilation systems. And so I think some makeup days, you know, a makeup day in a December is not unreasonable, or in a January is not unreasonable, just because, you know, I don't know, you might have to get a little creative and think outside of the box moving forward, because I am concerned that the way the calendar is built right now, it's hard to picture how we would fix this. So that would just be my note, is that I really do think that heat is going to become, you know, and maybe people in the community don't understand or know that those rules have changed. And I guess I forgot to turn my mic on. And we may have some parents who are really frustrated when we close school some random day in September, and they're going to be like, why aren't we in school? I know it's hot, but why aren't we in school? Well, the reality is, by law, we can't, you know, our employees, I think it's every 50, they need a 15-minute break in cool conditions every hour.
Yeah, it's interesting because the OSHA requirements were all about adults, but it didn't have anything
Right,
with students. But
right.
we did trial this. We really tried to look for a way, is it possible? And it simply is not possible.
So until we get a bond passed and get climate control issues fixed, I really think we're going to have to get smart and creative with our calendaring, because this is going to become a bigger and bigger problem. So that's my only comment, is that I'm in favor of just forgiving a few days, and then I'm also very much in favor of rethinking how we're building our calendar and not shoving a bunch of makeup days at the end of the year. I almost think we're more likely to have heat days out than snow days. So that's my thought.
When does the threshold get met for OSHA? Like what temperature? Because you have to implement these rules. And then
Yeah.
Also, do we make those decisions in the morning? Do we just estimate that at some point later in the day, we're going to hit this threshold? Because we're not going to actually wait until it hits the threshold and then try and get everybody home in the middle of the day, right?
Right. So I'll start with the second question. It's the easiest one. So we're out on the roads early when there's an anticipation of snow. And so there's a couple of us that are out at 4 a.m. driving the roads and figuring out what things look like and going up hills and sliding off the road. Heat is a trickier one than that, because you're really projecting out later in the day. If we'll do our best. We do this with the NOAA. We have a service to try to get a little more accurate weather with NOAA relative to snow. They do provide some service on heat as well, but there is a likelihood when we do have a significant wave of heat coming, that we will preemptively close. So what happens is we closed last year 1 day. It wasn't we did that in the middle of the day, I believe. It was not convenient, but we saw, because we run into, it's tricky because parents aren't home oftentimes. And so we probably will be making preemptive days, and that's a real risk. It's a real risk of, did you hit it? So we'd like to do those preferably. I say it's practical to do them in the morning, but it's not always practical for families who don't understand the heat index requirements from OSHA to do it before the day starts. So back to the first question. It depends. So there is no, when I say depends, this isn't intended to be derogatory toward OSHA, so I'll be careful because I have things I'd like to say, but I won't. It depends on the kind of work someone does. So for example, our maintenance and custodial staff who spend time outside have a different threshold. They take a look at the kind of work you do, and the kind of work our staff does varies wildly. Ask some employees today what their day looks like. Do you work inside? It depends. Sometimes I do, sometimes outside. So it's a hard one to gauge. So this rule really came about because of primarily it was a migrant farming where they've had some fatalities actually, about breaks. The practical application is it's tricky, but once you hit the 90, once you hit a heat index of 90, and the heat index is a combination of both heat and of humidity. And so it's called the NOSH app.
There's an app right here.
We have to review this every hour. We have to send things out to our employees. There's actually a spot, and employees are probably like, why am I getting these emails? But when you get this, when you're in this, it actually is you have to say it's getting close to where you could be at danger. And so it takes a little bit of effort to do that. So it depends, but really that 90%, that 90-degree heat index, which is again a combination of humidity and heat, and so what happens is you have to relieve people for a certain amount of time, have a cooled space. 85% of our buildings or classrooms don't have air conditioning. Many buildings don't have a space to cool down. We've looked at everything from swamp heaters or coolers, but then the reality is you can't do it for your children. So you have to have them not be with children, but then who takes care of the children? And so I think to Director Larson's point, we could see an increase of this. We could literally have an issue, and the struggle with this one is it's very disproportionate. And that's the thing that is really frustrating. There are school districts that have adequate facilities that will never deal with this. Our district will deal with this, both our location and that's just heat. So it depends. The heat index, when it gets about 90, that's when the rules shift and change. And it depends if you're working inside, outside, they call it medium, light exertion, medium exertion, or heavy.
And one more question for you. As other businesses in the community also deal with this, they have the resources and the ability to make that call when the heat index hits 90. They can change their operations at 4 p.m. and they have the ability to do that. We don't have the ability at all to do that. Is that correct? So what do we do in the situation where the forecast calls for it to be lower and all of a sudden we have a heat wave blows through and we're not expecting it, and it comes around and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and we hit that part?
We would address this the same way in which we try to address a surprise weather event like snow. And we'll work with our transportation partners. We have some, remind and one call and do our best. It's not ideal, and I think it's very possible that will happen. And it could happen. So again, it's tricky for us the community's not ready, nor do they widely understand these OSHA rules. I received a number of emails from upset parents and employers when we canceled last night. And it's just one of those things you have to follow the rules. And
We shut down a football game last year. With heat.
I can tell you the OSHA personally tell you the OSHA is implementing these rules and following closely along with anybody. And we've already had a day this year where we reached that point.
Yeah. So it is a challenge for us. I do think where we can adjust, we've adjusted. We've had a number of our maintenance staff that have come in quite early, for example. I know in the timber industry, for example, there are some workarounds where you're starting really early, but we serve kids and community, and we have some set hours, even contractual hours. And so it'll be harder for us to shift that.
One more question, comment, and I'll stop. I just want to be clear that all these rules are for the staff, and that's an OSHA rule, but we have no rules in place for children. Our children can be anywhere at any temperature at any time, right? According to state law.
Well, so there's
nothing
according to
stopping our
state
kids.
law and then there's how we look at things.
But I
And
don't-
so,
I don't-
yeah.
we look at it, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Not for an argument overall. Just
Yeah.
For the world to hear, but there's no
Oh.
reasoning, there's nothing saying our kids can't do that. This is just to protect.
OSHA is about employees and the rules apply to how an employer works with employees. They do not have any safety provisions for children.
That's all I wanted to clarify.
Well, directly, I don't want to invite OSHA or the Oregon Department of Education to start making more rules. I think we can use the administration's sense about what's safe for kids or not safe for kids. With regard to the making up classes or not, my bias is in favor of having a longer school year, and I don't like the idea of that, about not making up days. So I realize making up days can be inconvenient for people. But it is useful to know how strongly people feel about not making up days.
Go ahead.
Well, and I'm not opposed to making up days. And I don't think teachers are either. I mean, we're in the business of educating kids. But I will tell you, a day in November is not of the same educational value as June 12th.
Okay.
I mean, that's just a reality. So yeah, we can be smarter about it. And I think we should be. I think that this calendar is no longer practical. To put the majority of our makeup days after school is supposed to be out. I don't think a lot of learning is going to happen on those makeup days. If we could get smarter, we can add some learning in. We can add some days at better times. That's all. That's my argument is that we need to just we got to move where those makeup days are, if that makes sense.
You and I are sharing our opinions for those to come beyond, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the chair has heard the director's comments. And as chairperson, I'm going to put this on an agenda item in the future so we can take action on it. All we're doing tonight is discussing, but it will be in the future an agenda item where we will be able to vote on it. And at such time, we will review all of the input that has been shared tonight so that it's incorporated and we have a working calendar that will be beneficial to all. Okay, next item.
Okay, the next item, item 7 on the agenda is, I'm returning to the board with. There we go. I'm returning to the board with a question the board asked and expected an answer, and I'm here to give somewhat of an answer tonight on the stadium advertising comps. This was a question in regards to a public comment, a few public comments we heard about stadium renaming, and so I want to thank Cheryl Northam, who kind of helped reach out to some business managers across the state. It was kind of helpful, but there wasn't a whole lot out there. So what I can tell you is we did hear back from some people. And there's in terms of what a stadium akin to Finley Field, what the valuation on commercial advertising could look like. I will say it varies widely. We've had everything from someone reach out and say that district received a stock gift of $40,000 in stock. We have an example here in town of a $25,000 a year sponsorship. We have a like-sized district in Southern Oregon that is $100,000 a year major sponsor. I think 2 of those major sponsors, that's each. And then we had another organization that shared that they had a $700,000 gift for the naming of the stadium, and that happened 10 years ago. I don't know what that means, if that means it's 10 more years or it's the end of the year. They didn't share that with us. And then we had some people reach out and say that they have received, there have been some private donations. And I think there could be a range of those that don't need to be disclosed. What I will say is a field of this size certainly has a value. I think on the low end, it's probably, we don't know, but probably in the $25,000 range. It is a multi-sport classroom, if you will, and facility. To get a better idea of that, what the board could ask for is they could ask for a request for proposal to be sent out to see who would be interested in and possibly getting in that conversation to see what that value might be, and we could kind of narrow that value a little bit. I will also mention, I know we're talking about Finley Field tonight, but we are in the process of also constructing another field, and that's the softball field, which will also clearly have a value to it as well. I'll turn that over to the board. Hopefully I wish I had more information with the more definite value. It does seem to vary, but I can say in conversations with people that there certainly is a value.
Any comments? Cotton.
Thank you for doing the work. This is why we have a policy in place. And I don't want to keep banging on the drum that, you know, the bond didn't pass, but the bond didn't pass. And so now funds have to come out of general fund, basically. And so I think anytime professionally that we can earn revenue, because we've got to replace that turf on the football Finley Field eventually, probably what, 8 years, 7, 8 years. Eventually you'll have to replace the soft or the whatever the new field. And that a lot of that money is coming out of general fund. I've heard anywhere from 1.5 to 1.8. I bet it when it's done, it's gonna be over 2 million. Just, we know how costs go. And Lord knows it's gotta be as well as Legion Field or One Champion Car Wash, whatever it's called, or we're gonna get in trouble again. So I think things are a little bit different. We need to look at revenue. And I don't know if is this an action item
No,
tonight?
it's not.
So next board meeting, if we direct the superintendent to go out for a proposal, we have to wait till next meeting to do that. Okay.
That's great. And I'm going to recommend that instead of putting up a permanent sign, we have a school board that has digital change. So if the advertiser doesn't pay, it can eliminate him in a hurry. Put up a sign, you got to pay for it, take the sign down. I discussed this item several years ago when they wanted to spend $45,000 to put the word Indians on the end of that field. And it was going to take that much to change it, had we lost the mascot. So I want to see flexibility in our revenue. So I think we should put out an RFP.
Okay, so anyway, finishing up, I hope that's on next meeting so we can get rolling on this. I just, you know, for years, boards, I mean, I was part of the board, I've been here a couple of years. We didn't want to do any advertising, so to speak, because our kids saw so much of it.
Yep.
You know, I mean, no, you can't put a Pepsi logo there, it's
That's right.
evil. And
Okay.
it's not evil, but you know, so it's different now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, and to be clear, I mean, if the board wants to encourage us to get moving on that, even before an action item tonight in the discussion, I'm certainly
Just do that.
if that's the willingness of the board to do, Cheryl and I can get moving on that process. If that's what you'd like to do. And then there was something to maybe take action on the next meeting if you'd like.
I think S-Mart is waiting.
Well, I think it would be a good idea to put it on the agenda for the next meeting to move forward with RFS, I can't remember what the acronym is. But also, I mean, I think that this income is equal to the rental properties that we have.
Yeah.
I mean, in that area, and I think it'd be silly for us to not capitalize on a rental property that we have that's just sitting there. You wouldn't leave it empty. Why are we leaving the field empty when we can get paid for it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just mention too, I mean, I love Finley Field, but if you sit in those bleachers and you look up at the bird netting, I look at that field and think there's things that actually need to get done there. This is kind of weighing on my mind as I think about deferred maintenance and some of those things. So we don't know what the revenue income would be or even do at this point. That'd be a later discussion, but we do know that there's work to keep that stadium in tip-top shape as well.
Thank you, Brett, particularly.
Well, I'm still the old fashioned. I don't like advertising.
Okay.
But in thinking about a naming proposal, I think you should perhaps ask for people to give proposals of a 1-year naming rights, 5-year naming rights. Different people that you might be doing business with have different
Exactly.
ranges of
Exactly.
interest. As opposed to just leaving it all blank.
Yeah, and oftentimes things like first right of refusal, carries more. And so we'll work to bring you something to consider next board meeting.
Okay. To the board members, I'd like to remind you that you have on your desk tonight a letter and invitation to the RHS graduation on Saturday. It would be extremely beneficial if you confirm with Janet your participation and do that quickly so we can make sure arrangements are done. We thank you for that. The next board meeting will be on June 7th at the High School Media Center, starting promptly at 6 o'clock. If be there no other business before the board tonight, as chair, I hereby adjourn the meeting. Meeting's adjourned. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming.